You won't believe what happened to me. Something that felt straight out of a nightmare. Imagine waking up one day to find out your pension check, the money you've worked your whole life for, has vanished. And the person responsible, none other than the HOA president, the so-called Karen everyone warned me about. This wasn't just some petty dispute, it was a serious theft, something that shook me to my core. I had trusted my community, but now I was facing betrayal from someone who was supposed to keep things fair. As the story unfolded, it got even darker. I had to get the police involved, and that's when a police inspector stepped in, someone who wasn't going to let this slide. What started as a personal loss quickly turned into a federal crime investigation. The tension between me and the HOA Karen escalated, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice, trust, and standing up against corruption. But here's where it gets wild. The inspector didn't just stop at questioning her. There was an arrest, something nobody expected. What exactly happened during the arrest? How did this HOA Karen end up facing federal charges? Stay tuned, because the next part of this story will blow your mind. Before this all happened, I never imagined the HOA president could be involved in something so serious. She was the kind of person who seemed obsessed with rules, always watching, always judging. But beneath that strict exterior, nobody expected her to cross the line into something illegal, especially not theft. Our neighborhood had its usual disagreements, sure, small complaints about noise or landscaping, but nothing like this. I always thought those stories about HOA Karens were just jokes or exaggerations. Turns out, they can be all too real. The pension check wasn't just any money. It was supposed to cover my bills and essentials, the peace of mind after years of working hard. When it disappeared, I was devastated and confused. I kept asking myself, how could this happen? Who would do this? The suspicion slowly fell on the HOA president when I noticed unusual activity in the community's financial records and strange explanations from her. I tried to confront her, but she denied everything with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. That's when I decided to take things further and contact the police. The inspector who arrived was calm but serious, someone who clearly knew how to handle delicate cases like this. As they dug deeper, it became clear this was bigger than just a stolen check. There were federal laws involved, and this Karen had crossed them. But why? What was she hiding? The answers were nowhere near simple, and the real story was only just beginning to unfold. As the investigation continued, things got even more complicated. It wasn't just about the missing pension check anymore. I started uncovering a pattern. Other residents had also experienced strange issues with their finances, suspicious fees, and unexplained charges tied to the HOA. People were afraid to speak up, worried about retaliation or being labeled troublemakers. That's when I realized this wasn't just a personal problem. It was a bigger issue affecting the entire community. The HOA Karen, who once seemed like just a strict neighborhood watchdog, was now at the center of something much darker. Rumors began swirling about her using her position to manipulate records and control funds in ways no one expected. Some neighbors whispered about her having connections that went beyond the community, which made me wonder how deep this all really went. Was she working alone, or were others involved? Meanwhile, the police inspector kept pushing for answers. Every time I thought we were getting closer to the truth, new questions popped up. There were conflicting statements, missing documents, and even moments when it felt like someone was trying to cover their tracks. It was clear that exposing this was going to be a battle, and that the consequences would ripple far beyond just one stolen check. As the tension built, I couldn't help but worry. Was this just the beginning? What else was hidden beneath the surface, and who would be the next to fall? The story wasn't over, not by a long shot. The deeper the inspector dug, the more twisted everything became. What started with a missing pension check had turned into a full-blown fraud investigation. Late one night, I got a call. Another resident had come forward with proof, a stack of HOA documents that didn't add up. Hidden fees, forged signatures, and bank transfers that led to accounts no one recognized. That's when it hit me. This wasn't carelessness. It was calculated. It was theft and possibly mail fraud, which could carry federal charges. The deeper the inspector dug, the more twisted everything became. What started with a missing pension check had turned into a full-blown fraud investigation. Late one night, I got a call. Another resident had come forward with proof, a stack of HOA documents that didn't add up. Hidden fees, forged signatures, and bank transfers that led to accounts no one recognized. That's when it hit me. This wasn't carelessness. It was calculated. It was theft and possibly mail fraud, which could carry federal charges. The inspector brought in a forensic accountant, and that's when things really started to unravel. Every transaction was a clue, and every clue pointed back to the HOA president. But what was even more chilling? There were signs that someone else might have been helping her. A name kept popping up. A board member who always stayed quiet during meetings, someone we'd all overlooked. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about one Karen. It was about a scheme that might have been going on for years. Security footage from the clubhouse mailbox area showed something strange the night my pension check disappeared. A figure in a hoodie, moving like they didn't want to be seen. And when the inspector reviewed it frame by frame, the pieces started falling into place. Tension in the neighborhood reached a boiling point. Whispers turned into late-night phone calls, people locking their doors earlier than usual, waiting for the next shoe to drop. Then, the inspector called an emergency HOA meeting. Everyone was there, tight-lipped, tense, eyes darting. What was about to be revealed would change everything. But before a single word was said, the door opened slowly, and in walked someone no one expected. The room went silent as the unexpected guest stepped through the door. It was Karen's son, someone none of us had seen in months. Last we heard, he had moved away after some trouble with the law, but here he was, back in the middle of an investigation that was already boiling over. He didn't say a word at first, just locked eyes with the police inspector, then looked straight at his mother. The tension was unbearable. You could feel the energy shift like something huge was about to drop. The inspector asked him to sit, but he stayed standing. Then, almost casually, he pulled out a folder from under his jacket. "I need to speak," he said. Everyone leaned forward. What he shared next changed everything we thought we knew about the stolen pension check, the HOA fraud, and Karen herself. He claimed that the whole thing didn't start with his mom, that she was covering for someone else. And according to him, that someone might have been forcing her hand. There was talk of threats, missing money from years ago, and a hidden account that wasn't in her name at all. The folder held emails, screenshots, and a signed letter that pointed towards someone we never imagined. Another senior resident who had always played the role of innocent bystander. Suddenly, everything felt like a setup. Was Karen actually the mastermind, or had she been manipulated into taking the fall? The inspector, now clearly on edge, asked for a recess and took both Karen and her son into another room. The rest of us sat frozen, staring at each other, trying to make sense of what we'd just heard. And that's when one of the neighbors, an older man who'd barely spoken until now, stood up and slowly walked toward the front of the room. His face was pale, but his eyes were steady. He cleared his throat and said, "There's something I need to confess." Everyone turned toward him stunned. The old man, Mr. Dwyer, was someone we all thought of as just a quiet neighbor, the kind who waved from his porch and kept to himself. No one had ever suspected him of anything, but as he stood there, his voice shaking slightly, he admitted he had once been the HOA treasurer years ago, before Karen ever took over. He confessed that long ago he'd set up a separate account to manage emergency community funds. But when his wife got sick and medical bills piled up, he started using that account for personal expenses. When Karen became president, he said she discovered the account and threatened to expose him, unless he did exactly what she said. That was the twist no one saw coming. Karen hadn't been working alone, but she wasn't just covering for her son either. She was using Mr. Dwyer's past to manipulate him into helping her skim money from the HOA accounts, falsify records, and cover up the pension check theft. It all connected. The fake fees, the stolen mail, even the security footage. Mr. Dwyer had been erasing things, hiding details, all because he feared his past would ruin him. The inspector returned just as Mr. Dwyer was finishing. Karen's face was blank, but her son looked furious, like he'd been kept in the dark, too. The inspector took in the scene, and in that moment he made the call. Both Karen and Mr. Dwyer were taken in for questioning. The room erupted in whispers. Dwyer were taken in for questioning. The room erupted in whispers, but there was a strange sense of relief, like the truth had finally pushed its way through. Just when we thought it was all over, the inspector turned back and said something that sent a chill through the room. "This isn't just a local fraud case anymore," he said. "Federal investigators are stepping in, and there's a third name on the wire transfer logs we haven't identified yet." That's when it hit me. This whole time, we were focused on the HOA, Karen, and Mr. Dwyer. But someone else, someone still in the shadows, might have been pulling strings from the start. In the weeks that followed, federal investigators stepped in and confirmed what the inspector had suspected. Karen, Mr. Dwyer, and a third person, a former HOA contractor, had been part of a scheme that ran deeper than anyone expected. That third name had been quietly moving money through fake repair invoices and false service calls for years. Once the investigators traced the wire transfers, everything came to light. Karen had stolen my pension check because it was a large sum and untraceable once deposited. But what she didn't expect was for people to speak up. Karen ended up facing multiple charges, including mail fraud and embezzlement. Mr. Dwyer cooperated fully and received a lighter sentence, and the contractor, who had moved out of state, was arrested after a quiet but serious manhunt. The HOA was completely restructured, and for the first time in years, the community felt like a safe place again. I got my pension check reissued, but more than that, I got my peace of mind back. This experience taught me that standing up, even when it's hard, matters. Sometimes the truth hides in plain sight. And in a world where trust is easily broken, it's the courage to question things that can truly bring justice. In the weeks that followed, federal investigators stepped in and confirmed what the inspector had suspected. Karen, Mr. Dwyer, and a third person, a former HOA contractor, had been part of a scheme that ran deeper than anyone expected. That third name had been quietly moving money through fake repair invoices and false service calls for years. Once the investigators traced the wire transfers, everything came to light. Karen had stolen my pension check because it was a large sum and untraceable once deposited. But what she didn't expect was for people to speak up. Karen ended up facing multiple charges, including mail fraud and embezzlement. Mr. Dwyer cooperated fully and received a lighter sentence, and the contractor, who had moved out of state, was arrested after a quiet but serious manhunt. The HOA was completely restructured, and for the first time in years, the community felt like a safe place again.